Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, everybody, we are about to get started here. If you want to turn on your camera, then we can kind of talk to each other. I've got you over here to my right, so it's not like I've got a better offer and I'm doing something else over here. I'm looking at you, and so that way I typically run two screens here. We've got a lot of very critical information for you to use in your absolute everyday life. And I'll share some instances with you, and we'll talk about what it is that's going on in your brain and how you protect it and how you heal it. All right, so here's my theory. If people know what is actually happening in their body, then they understand it and they're more apt to protect it. You know, it's like working out. Okay, somebody's going to exercise or something like this. And so I think one thing that's very important to understand, if you're trying to just build strength, you know, just to try to, you know, build some muscles, keep yourself in shape, you want to do things slowly. And the reason you want to do things slowly is because what you're actually doing is tearing apart the muscles that you're using. And it's kind of scary, isn't it? You're ripping them to pieces. Okay, that's good. So those last few repetitions are what get you. Okay. And so understanding what's happening in different parts of your body helps you do them. And I think that that's going to really help us with what we're talking about here. Okay. And I'm getting some chats from people. If your camera doesn't work, that's perfectly fine. Those of you that it does, I just think this makes this a little more intimate and it makes us feel like we're actually all together. Okay. And that's really what we're kind of shooting for. Okay. So as always, I am very informal as we get to something that you want to talk about. So you can either open your mic at any time. Your mics should be closed if you're not talking, but if any time you want to open up your mic and chime in, absolutely. You can also chat. So I'm going to open up my chat over here, and I can look over here and see the chat for what people might be wanting to add. And you've also got down at the bottom here your reactions. So if you want to go and give a reaction or vote to something, you'll see that I'm doing it. And I'm actually running two screens. So you'll see one of me live and then one of me in a photo. Okay, and we are recording this today, and this will be posted for you to view later or to share with folks. So I encourage people to learn about the brain and how to help their mental health. Okay, and if you know of anybody who would like to join us on these Zoominars, they are perfectly welcome. They just need to send me their email address and I will sign them up and they'll get a notice. And if they miss the session, it's no big deal. They can always watch the video later. Okay, well, those are the ground rules for today. So let's look at your brain. How critical is your brain? And everybody says, oh yeah, my brain's really important, but they don't really think about it. Your brain is involved in everything you do. Now, think what that means. It's your mood. I'm just in a bad mood today. That means there is some kind of imbalance. There's something going on in your brain. Probably a flooding of cortisol and adrenaline. All right. So it determines how you feel, how you act, how you interact with other people. It determines who you are as a parent or a friend, a child, and a human. Okay. Now here's a good place right here. All right. So let's do a few votes here. How many people know some folks who are angry all the time? They're always, yeah, getting some good hands. Yeah, see, this way we can vote with our hands. We can, okay, that is a brain disorder. That's a brain disorder. Everything in your brain tells you how you're going to react. How many folks know somebody who is hypersensitive and you can't say anything to them? ever. There you go. And I will tell you, there's a phenomenal series of articles with the New York Times. That's a brain disorder. And see, I want you to start looking at things a little differently here. How many people have ever heard of battered wife syndrome? You ever hear that? Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to show you through today, these are the scans that we can look at to see if somebody really does have battered wife syndrome. All right. Now, here's a good one. How many people have ever had battered employee syndrome? Yeah. I mean, you're emotional, okay? And you can feel it, all right? So understand this stuff, I'm just in a bad mood. I want you to start thinking, I've got too much adrenaline and cortisol in my brain today. Everything is balance in your brain. And if you don't have that balance, you will destroy your brain, like probably about 80% of everybody you know. So I will tell you, we're heading to national crisis here. No doubt about it. You look on the news, you look around you, this is a problem. Now, think about how your brain operates. And this is going to be really critical for you protecting it and rebuilding it. Okay, so your brain makes up about 2% of your body's weight. I mean, think about it. Here's your brain all the way up here, and then you got the entire rest of your body. But it burns 20 to 30% of all the calories you eat. Now think how disproportionate that is. And when I'm in like class or something, I always say, hey, what if we had Krispy Kremes? A dozen Krispy Kremes, everybody's going to get a dozen Krispy Kremes to eat, and you can wash it down with a Mountain Dew. Okay, now let me tell you, your brain feels like soft butter. And there are no metabolic reserves. What's it mean? There are no fat reserves to burn. Like around our middle, a lot of us have a certain amount of fat reserves. That's to protect our bodies because humans used to starve to death. But you got to think the fat in your brain is used to protect your brain. So whatever you eat is going to affect your brain right now, immediately. Okay, so think about that diet. When we get into November and December, we're going to really focus on, okay, what do we have to do to rebuild our brains? What are the strategies? Well, you're going to understand a lot of it's going to be that balance of adrenaline and cortisol and what we eat. Oh, and just let me tip my hand right here. You want a healthy brain? Absolutely. I have more water. Look at the size of my water glasses. Okay, look at that. Okay, I mean, I'll tell you, you got to drink half your weight in ounces in water every day. Right there, every day, or you will be brain damaged. Okay, it burns 20% of oxygen and everything else that's in your blood. Now think about that. If you smoke, you're cutting down on the oxygen that's going to your brain. You're going to damage your brain. So you kind of see this disproportionate relationship here. I have had clients who have started to get upset stomachs just walking into work, throwing up in the parking lot. Okay. I had one client who her hair was falling out. Okay. Freeze right there. Let me tell you why her hair is falling out. This distress of the lawsuit that we were going through, we're actually with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission at that point, but we're moving on to the lawsuit. She's so filled with cortisol and adrenaline in her body that the immune system, you got two immune systems. One is with your T cells that come out and attack germs. You've heard a lot of that. Basically, we've learned so much because of HIV. HIV was the gateway to understanding our T cells. Well, those are those little tanks that come out and blow stuff away. But we've also got inflammation, swelling. If you break your ankle will swell. That is your immune system swelling to keep pathogens out. She has so much cortisol and adrenaline in her body that she's developing an immune condition. What's that? Alopecia. Alopecia, that's what alopecia is. Your body is attacking itself and you lose all the hair. That is what is happening. Now, whether it actually develops into alopecia, who knows? But see, 20% of all that adrenaline cortisol is going to go throughout her body, and 20% is going to go to her brain. Okay, so you kind of see, I want you to be thinking distress and eustress. Okay, so, and how well you treat your brain will determine how fast it will age. I will tell you, in our society, we treat our brains like soccer balls. We truly do. We treat our feet better than we treat our brain. And as a result, we are expected to see Alzheimer's triple in the next 20 to 25 years. So if you aren't scared to death, something's wrong with you, okay? Something is definitely wrong with you. Because, but I tell you, today we're going to look at, how does this not happen to you? How does this not happen to you? Well, okay, so how do you rewire your brain? And let me just clue you off here. 20 years ago, we could not have had this conversation. We couldn't have had it, okay? And I have gotten in more debates and been attacked more over this issue than most anything else, okay? Often by healthcare facilities. And I will tell you right now, these physicians and these administrators are killing us because they're keeping this information from getting to you. And understand, the neuroscientists, actually, this is always true. The scientists always lead the way. They always lead the way. It's like cancer research. I have a client that does the tabulations of the cancer trials. Well, they know 5 to 10 years ahead of everybody else what cancer treatments are coming out. Okay, I'll tell you some pretty exciting stuff. So everything I've learned across the last 20 years, I mean, exactly 20 years, 21 years, because in 2021 is when I started the research on this topic. And I mean, by taking courses from Cornell, Vanderbilt, UCLA, the great courses, all of these different medical colleges and neuroscientists. And so let's look and see what is happening in your brain. Okay, now, a couple terms we want to make sure that you understand. Neuroplasty or plasticity. Okay, what that means is neuro, your brain, and we say your brain is plastic. There are certain neuroscientists who refer to your brain as the Play-Doh in your head, which I think is pretty funny. I think that's about right. We say it's plastic because it will change. Now remember, it feels like soft room temperature butter, very soft. So it will actually change. So neuroplasticity refers to when you have these, two ends of the neurons, and you see the little electrical charge there. A little electrical charge will shoot this yellow goo, which is what we call neurotransmitter, back and forth between each other. And understand, this is amazing. We talk about the connections in your brain. You don't really have any connections in your brain. It's really pretty amazing. Those little gaps in there, which we call synapses, those gaps, there are trillions of them throughout your brain, and they never touch. Isn't that kind of an amazing thing? I mean, you talk about engineering, getting all that stuff in there and they don't touch, okay? So they're gonna shoot this electrical charge back and forth, and here's what's gonna happen. Okay, so let's look at the long, skinny neurons on your far left. Okay, you see how narrow they are, okay? There's only so much neurotransmitter that's going to go back and forth, and they shoot and then reabsorb with that electrical charge, and that just moves at lightning speed. Let me just tell you, the speed at which that moves is about 268 miles an hour. Faster than the Indy 500. That's how fast our thoughts can move. Okay, so you see the one on the far right, or far left, I'm sorry. Okay, so, and again, those neurons feel like room temperature butter. So if you put an electric charge, and I want you to notice the electric charge there, into soft room temperature butter, how many people think that'll melt the butter? What do you think? I mean, we could do a little demonstration like, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and we could put, destroy a lamp and put electrical charge into butter. Okay. All right. So that shooting back and forth. Now look at the one in the middle. See how flat it's gotten? Okay, you are melting your brain. That is what you are doing. You're melting your brain. But look how much more efficient that those two neurons are getting with each other. You see, they're flattening out. And as it flattens out more and more and more, it becomes more efficient, more neurotransmitter, and on and on and on and on. Okay, so that's great. All right, and now you see at the top there, that little sprout that's coming off there. Okay, you are growing new sprouts. Okay, so you're overloading that circuit. So you kind of see, this is what happens if you learn how to hit a curveball. And this is what we talk about with skill building. And this is why a lot of your training doesn't work, like for communication training, conflict resolution. And that's a skill. You got to educate people, show them what to do, but then they got to practice it. Well, when you practice something, you see all the electrical charges going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you start to overload those neurons, they will grow new sprouts. Now look at the one on the far right. You see how you've grown an entirely new connection. Okay, that's what you do again and 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 again. Okay, so this is why you drive to work every day and you don't have a clue how you got there. That's why. It's just practice. Okay, you've done it because you've built so many connections. Now, when you grow new sprouts, so you see there's an example of a neuron in there, and you're overloading it, you're growing new sprouts. That's called synaptogenesis. You're growing new synapses. So that's called synaptogenesis. So you've got this existing neuron and you're growing new sprouts off of that. Now, look at the one on the far left. Well, that's an isolated neuron. You grow about 100,000 new neurons, totally new, every month in your brain. Okay, and that's from the little stem cells that are in your brain. We used to think that you were born with all of the neurons that you would ever have. That's what we used to think. That is not true either. So it's a very exciting time for people who are trying to improve their brains and things like this, because you're growing 100,000 new brain cells. So let's assume the brain cell, the neurons on the far right, which are really two neurons because you've got two connections there, or got a connection there, that just grew this month. So you're going to use it and use it and use it and use it and use it, and then you're going to grow all these sprouts. You grow 100,000 new neurons in your brain every month, which is going to help rewire your brain and repair your brain. And for every neuron, you can grow hundreds of new sprouts. So yes, you can grow millions and millions of new connections in your brain every month. Every month. All right. Now, this is why they have studied concert violinists and pianists. And this area in your head, right above your ears, stretching down from the top of your brain, that's called section 2, area 2. Concert violinists and concert pianists could literally play the piano or the violin half asleep because they've done it so many times. It's just automatic. Okay, they have about twice as many neurons in that area of the brain as you and I do. Okay, this is why, let's say that you got transferred 10 miles to the east to a different location. Okay, now you're actually going to have to think about it. Okay, you can't really take a nap and drive to work. You're actually going to have to focus on what you're doing. And so you drive to work and you got to focus. Well, you do that once, then you do it the next day. Have you ever heard? How many people have ever heard it takes 22 days to build a habit? You ever hear that? Neurosynapsis and neurogenesis is what they are talking about. That sounds kind of pompous to talk about it like that, but you build habits. Why? Because you're building all these new connections and you're building brand new neural pathways so that if you did that throughout all of October, come November 1st, well, you could just go on automatic. That is how your brain works. Now, let's just take a pause here for a minute. Anybody have any questions? Does this make sense? because it's really electrical engineering. You're rewiring your house. That's really what you're doing. Is everybody getting it? Give me a thumbs up if this is looking like, yeah, that makes sense. I got it. You don't have to belabor the point. Everybody's getting it. All righty, good, because I want you to understand that's what's happening. Okay, so, okay, good. Phoenix. Oh, yes, Phoenix. Also, why good chess players can memorize a board with pieces in place for a typical game. But if chess pieces are in random places, they wouldn't be in a game. They have about the same ability to memorize it as a regular person. Yeah, because it's all patterns, isn't it? Everything is, oh, okay. That's exactly the same way with chess. Any football fans out there? Yeah, got a few. Yeah, there we go. I'm a big football fan. Okay, yeah. This is what quarterbacks and receivers do. I'm not throwing the ball to you. I'm throwing the ball to where you're going to be. Now, how do I know where you're going to be? Because I know you. I know you. We get this feel for each other. And I know, I'll tell you, it is that syncing up of your brains. Absolutely. This is why you never play euchre with a married couple. Never. Okay? Never. Because their brains are synced. That, and they have all these nonverbal cues that they use with each other. I mean, they might as well just be talking. Okay? They cheat. All right. Everybody with me? All right. So good little illustration here. That's a thought. That's a thought right there. Then you have another thought. You got another thought, you got another thought, you got another thought, you got another thought. That's a habit. That is a habit. That is how we do it. Okay, so give you a great example how this works in real life, and I want you to be thinking about this. How do you build a habit? You just keep doing it and doing it. I actually got work on a tooth done a couple months ago, and it felt funny. It kind of felt funny because it was like a new piece put on the tooth, new work, because my brain wasn't used to having that there. Okay, so just thinking of neurosynapses and neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, what do? You keep biting on it. You keep clenching. You keep biting down. Because what's going to happen? Your brain is going to rewire itself so that it gets used to the new structure. And after a few days, guess what? You don't notice it at all because you've retrained your brain. This is also why people have phantom pains, like after they lose a leg or a hand. It's like they can still feel it there. Of course they can still feel it there. The brain thinks it's still there. So what do you have to do? You have to train your brain through repetition. Not just by telling it. Logical brain ain't going to get there. You're going to have to practice and practice and practice using your other hand and demonstrating that that hand isn't there anymore. Is everybody with me? So repetition, repetition, repetition. Now, what is going to destroy this entire process? And this is just a great little list that I've given you here. Brain injuries. Drugs and alcohol will impede your ability to rewire. Too obese, sleep apnea, smoking, caffeine, diabetes, hypertension, toxins. Oh my gosh, toxins. My brother was a cosmetologist, and he died back in 2018 from the flu. And we discovered that, caught the flu, turned septic, and then killed him. Okay, what we discovered after he had passed on was that he had something called hairy cell leukemia. Now, hairy cell leukemia is a real tricky one because it doesn't show up in a blood test. You have to look at the blood cells under a microscope, and they are disintegrating. So that's why they look hairy, okay? Well, all of the toxins that he breathed in over the years from being a cosmetologist gave him hairy cell leukemia. Those toxins, I'll tell you, I've seen brain scans of painters. They look like somebody on heroin. And why? Because 20% is going to your brain. So you kind of see there's all these things that we need to do to make sure that we're rewiring our brain. Low levels of thyroid, testosterone, omega-3s, vitamin D. The first thing I do when I am coaching somebody for emotional intelligence or something like this, I have them get their full fasting blood work. Because I'll get people that are sent to me that are quote, quote, problem children, and they've got low testosterone. So guess what? You're not getting the blood flow to your brain. thyroid. All kinds of things can go wrong in your body that will keep you from rebuilding your brain. Poor diets, sugar, stress, and depression. You will see next time the number one rule, number one above everything else, you've got to get as many jackasses out of your life as humanly possible. Now, how many people have jackasses in your life right now? Oh, yeah. Now, don't miss them. Yeah, you get some people with both hands here. Yeah, absolutely. You will never get all the jackasses out of your life. That is never going to happen. But the ones that you can excise, you do that. You do that. Okay. You get as many out as possible, hang around as many positive people, exercise. And I mean, taking a walk, unhealthy peer group. Now, what's good for your brain? Well, you protect your brain with a positive peer group, good people, clean environment. You're not inhaling toxins and things like this. Physical health, healthy weight, 8 hours of sleep. Sleep is a big, big deal. Otherwise, those neurons in your brain will not grow. New learning is great for your brain. Great diet, exercise, stress management, and multivitamins. Okay. And I'll tell you, it is amazing. Wake Forest University just came out with another great study across 2,262 people showing the absolute positive benefits of good multivitamins. I'll tell you, it's amazing. Everybody with me? Okay. So I showed you this before. I just want to make sure we're all talking about here. When we say stress, you've got eustress and distress. We love eustress. See the kid drinking out of the faucet there? It's a nice flow. And that's what you want. You want the flow of good people, of pets, of hanging around good people. But at some point, you overload with adrenaline and cortisol. Okay, now a little bit of adrenaline and cortisol is great, but you're not going to want to drink from a fire hydrant like that little girl is. You see, you're trying to rebuild your brain and protect it. But if you're constantly flooding it with adrenaline and cortisol, you will damage your brain. You'll damage it further and you will not repair it. Okay? What I want for you are those eustress chemicals. Oxytocin. Those are the happiness. That's a happiness drug. Some people call it the loving drug. Dopamine, positive motivation. Serotonin defeats depression. Endorphins kill pain. Telomerase protects your DNA and helps you get younger. It makes the DNA in your body live longer. See, everybody seeing here, it's not fuzzy feel-good stuff. It is the difference between having a troll in your life and flow. So let me just give you a heads up. Here's my program for rebuilding my brain. And you'll see at the top there, get as many jackasses out of your life as humanly possible. And let me just tell you, I run into jackasses. Actually, I will tell you. Now, here's a good one. Thinking of the balance of eustress and distress. I was at a conference in the last couple months, and I got invited to go to the conference. I said, sure. I got there. And apparently, the person in charge of the conference did not like me at all. And she made it very clear. I never had a conversation with her where she wasn't abusive, yelling at me, very demeaning, mocking me. And I'm like, why in the hell did you even want me here? Okay. And so I'll tell you, it was in 28 years of presenting professionally, it's the worst experience I've ever had in my life. And, you'd think at some point, people at least, you don't expect to be treated special or anything, but at least they wouldn't yell at you. At least they wouldn't be abusive. But a lot of the folks, the people were wonderful. They were so good. They were great to talk to. I did my session and then talked to these folks later, stuck around for lunch. Now think about this. You just got all of these distress chemicals from this coordinator. I mean, just horrible. I mean, I've never been treated so bad. But then you got all these eustress chemicals from the people that were there, the attendees. Now, let me just ask that question. Is it worth going back? What do you think? Any opinions on that? Because you see, yeah, Phoenix is telling me no, because yeah, you've got these distress chemicals coming. I can see that. What's anybody else have an opinion on that? Lori's saying no. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm seriously considering just not going off. Now, Paula's saying, yeah. Jessica's saying, no way. But you kind of see how it's a mixture of the two. Yes, you have new contacts. Yeah, Stephanie, absolutely. And some people I'd never met before. Good experiences outweigh the bad. Go again. Yeah. So you kind of see, it's like, okay, I've got these horrible, and I'll tell you right now, someone who is that angry and that bitter. And it was really funny because I heard this same thing from some of the people that were working with this coordinator and some of the other folks there, that the woman is, oh my God, I cannot even describe what some of these people were saying about this person. I think there's a mental disability there. Okay, so anyway, I caught my flight. I came home, and it's kind of funny because next year is going to be in New Orleans, and I'm like, the people were so wonderful, but do I have to put up with you? And this person's been with the conference for years. She isn't going anywhere, but she is a Nazi. She's a Nazi. So it's like, well, I kind of would like to see New Orleans, but not if I'm going to slit my wrists on the way home. Okay, so can't you? How many people have been in that situation where there are jobs or something where you're working with a horrible, horrible person, but then you got all these other great people around you? Who's ever been in that? Yeah, that's a very common type of situation. Very common. Yeah, every day. Yeah. So, we've got to weigh the different types of things. And so we're going to go through this list in more detail the next couple sessions, but I wanted you to see that. Now, let me show you. I've showed you before what my brain looks like. Let me show what happens in my son's brain. So that is my oldest son, Michael. He was born in 1993. Okay. And I'll tell you, for the first 4 years or so, I mean, he was personality plus, sang and danced and just did all kinds of wonderful things. Okay. Just fantastic. Okay. Oh, he was. He would walk up to people and shake their hands. He was so outgoing. Okay. And he loved to read. He loved to read. So we would read to him. And I've discovered that Green Eggs and Ham is just the most horrible book in the world. It is War and Peace for children's books. I mean, it takes forever. And so we would read all these books, and there's one of his books there. He always got books for Christmas and Thanksgiving or his birthday, and then we give him books all the time. And he was bragging at school that he could read at preschool and that he could read. And so one day my wife walks in, and Michael's 3 at the time, and he's reading this book. Okay, just up there in front of everybody, not shy at all. Then he got a little older and he wanted to play soccer. Okay, and so that's just great. But then one day, everything just shut down. Everything just shut down. This is about the age of 4.5 years old. Just completely changed. Okay, well, that was in about 2000. So I start all of my research and everything. In 2001, we got the diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, which is a type of autism. Okay, now, did not see this coming, did not think about any of this type of stuff. Okay, and I didn't even know what it was, so I had to do research. And so we started going from doctor to doctor to doctor. And I mean, these are some of the top psychiatrists around that they cost $400, $500 an hour and don't take insurance. So we're paying. Here's what we were told. They said, this is just the way he's born. It's the way he's wired. There's nothing you can do about this. So if it was chemical, then we could probably do something more with drugs. There's some things we can do with different medications, but you might want to get yourself ready that he might not be mainstreamed in school. He might need a special high school for kids with autism. Okay. And he might not go to college. And I said, but he's so smart. Yeah, but he might not be able to handle the stress and, the socialization, might not be able to do it. Okay, so this absolutely scared the bejeebies out of me. We were getting nothing but a death sentence from our physicians and psychiatrists. So I started doing research. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for video classes and neuroscience classes online. And this will date the time on DVD. Now, nobody watches DVDs anymore. Okay, everybody downloads everything. But boy, oh boy, I've got boxes and boxes full of DVDs. This is a nuclear SPECT scan that I learned about, and it's very, very different than an MRI. Okay, now, an MRI or a CT will look inside your brain for any type of structural damage. Any type of structural damage, like tears, clots, concussions. An MRI looks the same on a live person as a dead one. Okay, now this is very different. This looks at live human tissue. So we're going to watch your brain light up. So they put you in this machine, they inject you with a radioactive isotope, and they examine your brain. And I'm going to show you activity scans. Okay, so if you want to see how a brain is functioning, you want to look at it functioning live. Now, freeze right here. SPECT scans versus MRIs. That's basically the difference. Is that news to anybody? The difference between the SPECT scan and the MRI? That news? Yeah, I'm getting lots of hands and not. Okay, that I think is a cardinal sin. And a friend of mine, I think this was just rich. He was watching the Kardashians, and I guess Kim Kardashian is going to go for a nuclear SPECT scan. Good for her. Good for her. And I'll tell you, the fact that this is not as common as an X-ray is disastrous for us, just disastrous, particularly when we have one mass shooting in America, averaging more than one mass shooting in America every day. Okay, but that's what it looks like. Those attachments on the outside, those are nuclear. Okay, now here's what I started to discover. Psychiatrists are the only medical professionals who rarely see the organ they're treating. Now think about that. Cardiologists, neurologists, orthopedists, everybody else looks at that organ somehow, not a psychiatrist. All right, and I'll tell you, you got to pay attention to this guy, Dr. Tom Eisel. He's a former director of the National Institute of Mental Health. The unfortunate reality is that current medications help too few people to get better and very few people to get well. Okay? I'll tell you, when somebody has a mental disorder, and I have sent about 40 people, more than 40 people, I'm up to like 43 people in the last 15 years, 14 years, to get brain scans, because I'm not a doctor, but I know weird when I see it. When somebody's going from 0 to 60 with their temper all the time, they're ultra hypersensitive, they get stuck on it, can't get off it. I've never seen a simple disorder. Actually, most people who go to get a brain scan have at least 4 different mental disorders, because the part of your brain that's damaged, that's the mental disorder that you'll have. Okay? So think about this. There are 7 different types of anxiety right there. There are 7 different types of depression. What are the chances the doctor is going to listen to you for usually what is a 1 hour or 2 hour session, probably give you an intake form to fill out, and guess? What are the chances that they are going to guess correctly? I will tell you, the chances are 10 to 20%. This is your brain. How many people know somebody who has been dealing with some sort of mental issue for 5 or 10 years, and they're just not getting better? Anybody? Oh, yeah, look at all these hands. Absolutely. Think about this, folks. Yes, Brenda's giving me yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Would you do that if it was your heart? Would you do that if it was your intestines and you had diarrhea for 5 to 10 years? No. You kind of see, we ignore the brain. This is ridiculous. In one study, you got to look at this, folks. I will tell you. In one study, there were 109 patient charts given to these board certified psychiatrists. Here's from Phoenix. Unfortunately, some people don't take mental disorders as serious as physical disorders. You are so right. And the truth of the matter is, most everybody has a mental disorder because of the way we live and the way we treat each other. Absolutely. Now, these board certified psychiatrists were given these charts and they made their diagnosis. They examined these charts, which is basically how you diagnose with cluster symptoms. They were then shown the SPECT scans so that they could actually see what is happening in the brain. All right. 22% of the time, they discovered an unexpected brain injury. Okay. 22% of the time, they found toxicity. They changed their medication and or supplement orders. Actually, that should be 80% of the time, not 60. Now think right there. By adding in the pictures to the intake, actually 80% of the time, these psychiatrists changed their diagnosis and or treatment. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, they changed the medication or supplement orders 60% of the time. 80% of the time, they changed the medication supplement orders or the diagnosis. So that's why that stat says that. Okay, and this is what we talked about here. MRIs or look for structure. So if you have a concussion, great. If you're dealing with a mental issue, you need a brain scan. And I tell my clients, if you've been dealing with this for more than 6 months or a year, we're going to get a brain scan. Now, I'll tell you, I don't get any commission on that. Yes, please. Did I hear somebody? It's okay. All right, no problem. Okay, so we're basically going to look to see what works well, what isn't working so well, and what maybe is working too hard. So your brain has to be in balance. Now, let me tell you, it's not all brain scan. Okay, so we're taking, I had to go through this process. I've gone through this process twice. Michael has gone through this 3 times. It's a 25-page intake form. I had to complete it. My wife completed it. Michael had to complete it. It takes about an hour. We then spent an hour on the phone talking to the clinic. So there's another hour of intake. Then once we get there, we talk to somebody at the Amen Clinic for an hour. It's about 6 hours of intake. It's the most thorough process I've ever seen. Now, this is Michael's brain in 2006. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit. And I put all these little arrows in here for you. Okay, you see all along. Now, understand, this is Michael laying down, looking up into the machine. So you're looking at the underside of his brain. So we're going to look at the damage that is in his brain, which he was born with. He was born. Michael and I make great comparisons because Michael was born with this. And I always love this because these $400, $500 hour psychiatrists are saying that's just the way he's born. That's just the way he's wired. No, he was born that way. And I'm going to show you about 75% improvement here. I developed it and I've got about 85% improvement. Yeah, Linda's given us a great comment here. The treatment tends to be one size fits all. Oh, yes. And we're dealing with your brain. Okay, and let me just cut to the chase here. Based on these photos and everything, Michael was on the wrong medication. It was actually toxic. It was actually doing more harm than good. So, yeah, what are the chances they guessed right? 0. Okay, so he's laying down. So you see the right side of his temporal lobe? Okay. The right side of his temporal lobe is on fire. So everything in blue is your baseline temperature. That's your baseline temperature. Everything in red is burning 15% hotter, which sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. Okay. Anything with the white in the middle is 20% hotter. Okay. Now you see the right temporal lobe, anger issues turned outward. Okay. That is very common of someone who goes in and shoots and kills you. Your temporal lobe. Oh, now I got news for you too. If you damage your temporal lobes enough, you hear voices. You do not want damaged frontal lobes. And look at the left side, left temporal lobe, anger issues turned inward. Oh, that's suicide. And quite frankly, yeah, we made the decision to go get a brain scan a lot easier. We found a suicide note because he's getting bullied so badly at school. And see in the middle there, in the middle, the limbic system, well, that is an inflammation and corresponds with his intake. He's got some depression. Okay. And at the top there, you see the inflamed corpus callosum. That is obsessive compulsive disorder. You've got your right and left hemisphere. So we've all got this. So if you have a thought on the right side of your brain, it can travel over your corpus callosum, which is a bridge. Think of an old, Amish bridge or something. You cross over there and you cross back and forth. That's why humans are bilateral. Okay, the electrical charge will move back and forth. Okay, and so let's say that gets inflamed. Then you're going to start to send one of those electric charges, a thought, through that bridge, and it's going to get stuck. Can't get off it, can't get off it, can't get off it. Some people refer to your corpus callosum as your gear shift. Okay, how many folks know somebody who has a diagnosis or you suspect that they've got obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD? That's what it is. That's what it is. And he's got that. Okay. So again, more of the pictures to, point everything out. But I want you to look at the cerebellum at the bottom. Okay. You see on the left side how nice and full that is? Round. You want your cerebellum to be as absolutely as hot as possible. Those are your automatic functions. That is how you process emotions. Okay. It's also your coordination. Now look at the one on the right. You see how it's not as full? Well, he's left-handed. And since he's left-handed, the right side of the brain is dominant. That's the coordination issues. That's what we got to look at here. Okay. And so, and then there's more temporal lobe issues there that I'm pointing out for you so you can just get a better, clearer look. Okay. See how inflamed they are. Okay. So this is when I started to learn about Dr. Ron Siegel and Debbie Hampton. They refer to your brain as the Play-Doh in your head, and that is neuroplasticity. And so we are at the Amen Clinics talking to Dr. Charles Parker, and he said, well, I think we should sign him up for the interactive metronome. And I'm like, okay, what's that? I have no idea. And you're looking at it right there. Okay, so what's the idea? Well, you will be given these beats like a metronome, and you need to stomp your feet on these pads, and you need to clap your hands. And sometimes they put these little things on your hand to detect how accurate you're doing it. It's to build up your coordination. And remember, neuroplasticity, neurosynapses, the more you fire your coordination, the more you're going to build up the back of your brain, which is your cerebellum. How many people have ever heard that every so often you should walk backwards? You hear that? You should brush your teeth with your other hand. That's what you're building up. You're trying to build up your cerebellum. And as people get older and that starts to diminish, that's why we put them through the interactive metronome and things like this. Okay, I haven't heard of it before either, Brenda. Had no idea. Now, here's the irony. My wife and I are sitting there and we're saying, well, where would we find this? Where would we get this? And so they looked it up on the computer and they said, oh, here's a location right outside of Reynoldsburg where you live on East Broad Street. And we found out, oh my gosh, that is the Children's Hospital offsite. My wife works in that building. Okay, everybody with me? Okay. We had to fly 400 miles to find out that a therapy that's going to help rebuild Michael's brain is in the same building where my wife works. So much for your $400 or $500 an hour. I will tell you, the next check I wrote for these guys, I just wanted to shove it right down their throat. And I didn't. I'm very proud of myself that I haven't killed them yet. But How many people, if you're a parent, you're sitting there, you got my kid on the wrong medication. You told me that that was the way he was going to be for the rest of his life. And now there's this thing that will help build up his coordination. And you didn't even tell us about it. How many people would be pissed? Oh, okay. Now, if you ever wonder why there's no love lost between me and the medical profession, this is it. This is part of it. That, and I grew up with my mother being a drug addict. Okay, going back to 1965, she was addicted to pain medications by the medical profession. Now, of course, doctors would never prescribe too many opiates or opioids to you, would they? Still going on today, folks. Still going on today. Okay, so there's his brain in 2008. Now, you see how it's a little better? It's not as white. Okay, so, you know, it's about 15% better. Though not entirely better, but about 15% better. So you see how the two temporal lobes are calming down? So chances are he's not going to show up with a gun and start killing people. He probably won't kill himself. And look at his cerebellum. Look what the interactive metronome did to the right side of his cerebellum. See how much fuller it is? Oh, now here's interesting. His depression's worse. Why is his depression worse? It's got a little white spot. It's getting worse. And his corpus callosum, his OCD is worse because the bullying is getting worse. Now, remember I said, rule number one, get as many jackasses out of your life as humanly possible. This is what I'm talking about. We are spending thousands of dollars on therapies and vitamins and all kinds of things. It doesn't matter what you are doing to heal and protect your brain if you are living with jackasses every day. And just to show you how great our public schools are at this, Michael was in the bathroom about this time. And yeah, it's hell on other people. Absolutely, Phoenix. He was in the bathroom at the urinal. And these three kids, these boys, surround him and start teasing him. Okay, freeze right here. Let me just talk to the guys for a minute. If you're in the airport and you're at the urinal and someone comes around and starts teasing you and bullying you, is that a problem? Giving you my thumbs up. Actually, I got to find a stronger emoji for that. Schools do nothing. It's awful. Thank you, Stephanie. I am so, and I'm going to put up my really pissed face. There you go. That's me pissed. You're so right. This was an easy decision. We found another suicide note from Michael. So guess what? We're not Catholic, but let me ask you, is it going to do us any good at all to go through all these therapies? Yeah, it happens to girls in locker rooms all the time. Anybody see the movie Mean Girls? Oh my God. Okay. I'll tell you, it doesn't do any good to spend all this money and make him go through all these treatments and everything if he's going to keep getting beaten ahead. Now, let's freeze here for a minute. You've got one fight or flight response. Your body does not recognize the difference between a punch in the face and a punch in the self-esteem. It's releasing cortisol and adrenaline. And the story I just told you about dealing with, you know, some of these conferences and things like this, it's a punch in the face. And Jessica, you're right. Sadly, it still happens as adults too. Oh my God, yes, absolutely. Now, so what do? We life flighted him out of Reynoldsburg City Schools. And I'm not picking on Reynoldsburg City Schools. I think you can say this just about any city school. It is ridiculous. They're more afraid of being sued than whether the kids go home and kill themselves. Okay. And honestly, I'm going to deal with a bully and you violate my rules for bullying. Fine. Sue me. Fine. I'll go and countersue you and countersue the attorney, frivolous lawsuit. Done it before. I'll do it again. Okay. Now we're not Catholic, but they have an anti-bullying program there and they are serious about it. They are serious. So his college money went to high school. Okay. Now, let me ask you, here's a good one I always get. Sending to a private Catholic school. 65% of all the kids there who attend are Black. Is that white privilege? I always love this because I get labeled with so many things. It's like, I'll tell you, Michael went to school with all kinds of different people, which I think represents the real world. Okay, so now here they are side by side. Can you see what we look at the 2008 compared to the 2006? You see the temporal lobes. You see the cerebellum, particularly the left side, how fuller it is. That is neurogenesis and neurosynapses. That is what it does. But it doesn't do any. That's why his OCD and depression is worse, because he's still living with bullies. Now, that is his 2020 scan. You see a big difference? Okay, so the temporal lobes are completely clear. Completely clear. Okay, the depression we still got to work on. His OCD is much better. Now he has a little bit of anxiety. Now he's got to get back to his core. He's 26 years old when we had this taken, so he's got to get back to his coordination exercises, because you see, you never give up. He thought, well, I built up my coordination, I'm done. No, you got to get back to your coordination exercises, because you got to keep it up. Now, look at the comparison between the two. Look at that. That is what rewiring your brain can do. So I tell you, I've got the authenticated photographs to show this. I am telling you the absolute truth. Now look at sort of his body transformation, which will help you understand his brain transformation. That's little Michael getting ready to run his first track meet in high school. He's a freshman. Okay, see the little baby face? Absolutely no muscle definition at all. He wanted to run track, which is going to be great for his brain. Fantastic. Now you kind of see there's all these other kids. Oh, I want to get this. I want to go on to state. I want to win this champion. All I care about is that he runs track and builds up his brain. That's it. Our goals are very different. Okay, well, he had trouble finishing his first race, was not in very good shape. That's him, his senior year. You see a difference? It is incredible, but this is capable for anybody. Let me tell you right now, this is a kid with horrible coordination. He couldn't have had many other cards against him. But this is what determination does. And I will tell you right now, oh, this is just the way I am. No, you choose to be like this. You choose to be like this, okay? And I'll tell you, he ran the 800 and the 1600. I didn't know this, but the Ohio High School Athletic Association gives an award every year to the kid who overcomes a disability to participate in high school sports. And it's called the Most Courageous Student Athlete Award. And Michael won that for 2012 at Bishop Hartley. Okay, now just to let you know, there he is, his senior year, lettered in track and got the Most Improved Student Award or Athlete Award. And there he is, graduating with honors from Ohio State. Said he'd probably never go to college. Well, he's got honors, okay? And that's me almost getting arrested, getting his picture in the shot. Now, I'll tell you that I'm hanging on by my leg, and there's some 80-year-old old fart usher coming over trying to get me. And I'm like, well, he can't catch me. He's 80, so I'll get this picture by the time I get out of there. Now we're in Chicago. Okay, so here's a kid with autism. We're going to drop in the middle of Chicago at Roosevelt University to get his master's degree. And he's pointing to his building and his room. He's literally got $1 million view overlooking the Buckingham Fountain and Soldier Field. Okay, and that's him graduating with his master's degree in clinical psychology with a 3.91. Okay, so and of course, this is us when he got his graduation. We were all over Chicago. It should be inspiring. And the thing is, there's nothing special about Michael and I. Anyone can do this. And here's where I get really, really pissed, is that none of this stuff should be news to any of you. I've been researching this for 21 years. All right. And I am so excited about it. On my last brain scan, I had some big improvements in my brain, but I wasn't getting the blood flow. So, hey, and I tell you, with my former post-traumatic stress disorder, I absolutely positively do have Alzheimer's cells in my brain. It is impossible to have that much damage to your brain and not have Alzheimer's cells. I am not going to get Alzheimer's. I am not going to be symptomatic. So I bought myself a submarine. Okay, so that is my submarine in my basement. And it's really funny. You get the weirdest looks in the world when the guys come to work on the furnace or something. They go, what the heck is that? Well, that is my hyperbaric oxygen tank. So for 2 or 3 times a week, I crawl in there. There's a zipper in the front. I crawl in, strap myself in, take a nap or whatever, and breathe pure oxygen. Now, it's cheaper than Alzheimer's. Sending Michael to Bishop Hartley is cheaper than a casket. Okay, so I'll tell you, we've learned more about the human brain since the year 2003 than we've known for the last 5,000 years. And we are now finally moving out of the Stone Age of neuroscience. Now, you want to see one of your biggest obstacles? This is amazing. I used to do a lot of presenting for the Ohio Association of Community Health Centers. And I said, look, this stuff is really important. We've got to get this message out here. And this is Randy Runyon, the president, and this is a direct quote from the emails he was sending. He didn't like me. Okay, I don't really care. I don't like him either. But look what he says here. I think your doctors can confirm there's no brain scan to diagnose PTSD. They've been doing it for 20 years, 25 years. Now, freeze right there. Are these people who go to these community health centers, are they getting a fair shake? They're getting screwed. And you know why? Honestly, I see this guy as an idiot. That's my personal opinion. That's what I think. And you know why? Because he will not let this message get to these community health centers across Ohio. So fine. What do? I brush off my, and I didn't take it real well. So this was one of the emails he sent out about me. It's really funny. I like this one. Well, I don't like it when people stab me in the back. I get it a lot, though, because most people are passive aggressives and they won't tell you anything to your face. They smile, they give you a big hug, and then they stab you in the back. They're not going to get the message because they won't come to the sessions because this is what's going on. He's crazier and getting crazier. He's talking about me. I'll fill you in next time I see you. Actually, no, I'm not crazy. I have pictures to prove it. This is Michael. Okay, so just another look at what neurosynapsis and neurogenesis does for you. Okay, a complete re-engineering of his entire brain. Okay, brain imaging will play a major role in the future of psychiatry. Scientific American published that in 2003. Now, you kind of see here the problem. This stuff is not getting out to people because it's getting blocked. And very few people are going to do the research that I've done. But I'll tell you right now, my brain I don't even know if I would still be here, if I would still be alive. I don't even want to think about where Michael would be if we listened to the people who run our medical centers and listen to the people who are the practitioners. And I tell you, that's why I absolutely love that we have a research facility here in Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State University. They're doing research is where it is. Okay. And just another look here, I'll tell you, that's a huge difference. That's my brain in 2008. You see the diamond pattern? You see how inflamed it is? Look at the one in 2020. Now, I really like Randy's quote. Scott's crazy and getting crazier. No, I used to be crazy, but I'm not crazy now. Everybody with me? Now, for the next 2 months, we are going to be looking at what do you do to put together your program? What do you put together in your program? And you're going to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And rule number 1, you get as many jackasses out of your life as possible. You will never get them all out, but you want to get as many as possible. Is everybody with me? Okay, if you look at your handout, you've got the codes for today, HRCI. HRCI is 607-011. That's 607-011. And SHRM is 22-U3KAR. U3KAR. And I don't want to leave you with the thought that the Ohio Community Health Centers are the only ones who attack me over this. I get this from a lot of hospitals, but I just am lucky enough to have the defamatory emails from Mr. Runyon because, again, one of my friends sent them to me. It's good to have friends. Okay, questions, comments, deep religious concerns over anything. Here's a good one, Linda. Is there a place in Ohio that does that scan? No. The medical profession has kept that out. That you cannot get a scan anywhere in Ohio for this. You have to go to Chicago or you have to go to Reston, Virginia, which is where we go. But you're lucky, it's a half an hour flight. There's the HRCI code again, 607-011. How much you say a scan was? A scan is about $3,200, but because it's out of, like here in Ohio, because it's out of area, I've gotten the insurance companies to pay about half. So about $1,600. So that's not too bad. And it's a 3-day exam. You go on day 1 and they take an activity scan, while your brain is active. And then you go and you see the sites either in Chicago or Washington. Then you come back for a second day and you do a scan at rest to compare the two. Then you come back in on day 3 and the psychiatrist, radiologist, whatever, goes through your scan with you. So it's a 3-day exam. I'll tell you, in a day where Wellbutrin is up to $2,700 a month, that's a deal. And I'll tell you, I was paying these psychiatrists and psychologists, literally a couple $1,000s a year for bad advice. That's wrong. And I will tell you right now, it is a shame when you sit down with a psychiatrist and you know more about how the human brain works than they do. But I'll tell you right now, I was bound and determined to get my informal PhD in neuroscience. And today, in the 21st century, every single course that is available to medical students and neuroscientists, every single course is available to you. So I don't need a degree. I got enough degrees. I don't want another degree. I just want to know what I'm talking about. And I will tell you, this has become, I'm traveling all over. I've been in San Diego. I'm going to Denver next week to talk about what your workplaces are doing to your brain. And next week, I'm going to be with a great client. I'm going to scare the ever-living hell out of them. So, the book isn't out yet, Stephanie. Thank you. It is in layout. So there's some guy somewhere or gal that is making it look really pretty. But that's the front cover. And we hope that we will have it out here in the next few weeks. Gracie, what did you say about that school your son went to that stressed him out? I had a phone call while you're explaining. Well, he was in Reynoldsburg City Schools, okay, where Reynoldsburg City Schools is no different than most of the schools out there. They're more concerned about your test scores than whether you live or die. Oh, and I was going to tell you that Michael was surrounded by these kids in the urinal, and so he finished at the urinal, turned around, and Michael, kind of freakishly strong, and he basically picked him up and threw him around. He got suspended for defending himself. I will tell you, I think a well-trained kangaroo could do a better job running some of these schools. And I will tell you, the mental disorders that are going to be coming out of these schools, and just as another side note here, so you'll understand, kids don't get their frontal lobes. They don't get all the myelin sheath that protects your neurons. Ladies, you get yours about the age of 25 years old. Completely covers and encases the nerves to protect them. Guys don't get that until they're about 28. All right, so think what that means. When you bully a child, and I mean anybody, certainly under the age of 18, it's that cortisol and adrenaline is going to fry those neurons. Okay, so yeah, you can develop a mental disorder in a kid much faster than an adult. And we, as adults, are developing mental disorders at record paces. On average, 80% of everybody you know who has health insurance is on some kind of psychiatric medication. And I am not anti-psychiatric medication. I'm anti-giving somebody the wrong psychiatric medication. But I am adamantly opposed to someone thinking that that's all they got to do. Psychiatric medication does not heal the brain, it suppresses symptoms. And there's always side effects. Why don't you take the medications, find out if you're on the right medications, and do something in the meantime to start rebuilding your brain so that maybe you don't need as many psychiatric medications moving forward and maybe prevent Alzheimer's. Okay, that right there puts me at odds with a lot of the practitioners, which helps to explain some of the attacks that I get, many of the attacks that I get from medical facilities. All right, well, I'll tell you right now, I think you need to be your own advocate. You need to be your own spokesperson for your own health. And I think going to the masses like you folks, making sure you understand how your brain works and what you need to do. Every single one of you that hears this, either in the recording or here live, every single one of you can get positive results from what we're talking about. And so November and December, we're going to go through my entire program, all of those steps. What does it mean? What should you be looking for? Okay. How do you go about doing these different things? And no two of you will have the same program. And I'll tell you point blank, if you have a child who is getting bullied, I'll tell you, you are planting the seeds of, well, according to Dr. Adrian Rain, neuroscientist, you're planting the seeds of somebody who is going to be antisocial and maybe psychotic. Very, very likely. You treat a child like dirt, you're going to get those results. It's going to damage their brain. Okay. Everybody with me? Oh, I think education is everything. And I tell you, all this stuff is within your power. You don't need a superhero to help you. And a superhero couldn't help you if he or she wanted to. You have to do it. Okay. Linda, and the reuptake inhibitors, psych meds, start making it so that your brain starts sending out fewer charges because it is no longer getting the signal that they're needed. Yeah, there's one of your side effects. Absolutely, Linda. Yeah. So I don't think you should take any medicine without knowing what it does to you, particularly something that's going to alter the chemicals in your brain. Back to where we started. Your brain is important. Okay. You really ought to take care of it. Okay. Any other questions, comments, deep concerns? Okay. I'm going to have this posted here shortly, probably by the first of the week. And invite your friends. If anybody wants to attend the next two sessions, they are more than welcome. And thank you, Jessica. Thank you all for coming. And next time we're going to start looking at putting your programs together. Okay. Hey, everybody, take care.